So welcome everybody, and welcome Alyssa to my podcast on Wonderful Humans. We have pre-recorded this because my beautiful guest is in the States. We did get our timelines a bit higgledy-higgledy. Well, I got our timelines a bit higgledy-piggledy. So we're recording this, but I will post it on Tuesday as usual. I'm Liz Turner, the host of this podcast. I'm an empowerment coach, amongst other things I'd like to say, but for the purposes of this podcast. And Alyssa has kindly come. I've said your name wrong again, haven't I?
Alyssa, no, perfect.
Alyssa, so beautiful. Alyssa has kindly come along, and we are going to start the conversation. We're going to start with eating disorders, won't we? This is a topic that we picked, but it's going to have a few spikes coming out as well, isn't it? It's got a few topics in it. So tell us about you and your journey and where we got to so far. As you can see, it's summer holidays too, and my child is in the background.
This is life, right? Like, this is real life.
Absolutely.
My name is Alyssa, and I almost died a couple years ago, and my entire life changed.
Wow.
I have had an eating disorder since I was 11, and I'd really love to talk about like how they present and why they kind of come up. And so a couple years ago, my eating disorder, I'd normally been a binger purger, and all of a sudden things shifted, and it's so sneaky and insidious, and I became anorexic. And it snuck up on even me. And so I started to have heart problems, and I had to go to a treatment center. And I didn't even know, I think what is most important for me is I didn't even know that there was help out there. Like, I was just suffering in silence alone. And I didn't know that there's eating disorder rehab facilities, there's eating disorder psychiatrists, there's eating disorder therapists. I had no idea, and I'd been struggling. I'm 33. I got help when I was 30, and I'd been struggling since I was between 9 and 11. So This is a long time.
It is a long time. It's your entire life, isn't it? Struggling with something you can't just give up.
Well, and that's the thing, right? Is with a lot of addictions, it's like, okay, well, I'm going to, not do this anymore. But with eating, you can't give it up. It's food. You have to have food to live. And so you have to just completely recreate a new relationship with food, with your body, with your mind. And it's all connected, and it's all together. And that for me took a lot of practice.
Yeah.
So I was in the military for 10 years, and I was an airplane mechanic, and I was married, and my entire life was kind of shaped around this disease. And what happened for me personally in my own life was I had to reevaluate all of my life. Once I went to treatment and I wasn't active in my eating disorder, what came up for me was I did not choose this life. My eating disorder chose my life, right? Just like any other person with an addiction. Once you kick the addiction, you look at the life that you had created, and you're like, I didn't make any of these decisions. This thing inside of me did. And how do I reconcile that?
We were speaking just before I started recording that actually, I'm in a 12-step program. I'm very open about the 12-step program that I'm in, and that you are too. Do you find work in a 12-step program enables or helps your recovery with your eating disorder? Do you use any of the program?
When I first got out of treatment, there's a couple different eating disorder 12-step programs as well. Okay. There's so many resources out there completely for free. And I use the eating disorder 12-step programs. And what happened for me was once I kind of cold turkeyed it. When I went to treatment, I like set this thing down, and I never wanted to pick it back up again. I definitely had a year of a little bit of struggle, but really it hasn't weighed heavily on my mind as much as it did before. So I did this eating disorder 12-step program, and it didn't really fit the bill for what I was needing. And I have a friend that's a therapist that recommended this other 12-step program, which is adult children of alcoholics. And what I love about that is so many of us grew up dysfunctionally, whether we're willing to admit it or not. And what addiction is trying to put a Band-Aid over this deep core inner child wound. And so you can do a lot of 12-step programs and you can take the Band-Aid off, right? But you're still going to have this deep wounding that needs to be looked at. And what this 12-step program does is it really gets into that wound, and it's a reparenting program. And what I love about 12-step programs is, just like in the name, it's a program, right? So you have to follow guidance and guidelines, and there's language around it that literally changes your brain, right? Your neural pathways are being retrained with every meeting you go to, and with every person that you reach out to in recovery with each other. It's such a beautiful process, I think.
Absolutely. And just in terms of a program, having a sponsor, someone that's been there before you and got to, have worked this program a little bit longer, got a little bit more insight. I know it's invaluable to me, and it is absolutely turned my life around. I mean, and mine's, Narcotics Anonymous is what I do, giving it a shout out, then shouldn't really do that, but it is what it is. So I'm really interested in the fact that there's other 12-step programs that help people in their different arenas of life.
What I like about that is, we always talk about, in a 12-step program, you talk about share your experience, strength, and hope, right? And how beautiful is that? Like, I think a lot of us are walking around like, I'm the only one that feels this way, and I'm the only one that's ever done this horrible thing or experienced this horrible thing. For me, that's how it was. Like, I thought my life was the worst, and like no one could understand or relate to me. And that keeps you lonely, and it keeps you in a blanket of shame. And you can't really do a lot. I talk a lot about shame, because shame is this kind of like dark cloud. And when you're walking around with this dark cloud, you just find more of the same. And so the only way to get shame off of you is to shine a light on it. And that's scary, because it's scary to be real with someone and to be honest, about your deepest, darkest, like dirty little things about you. But the thing is, once you start talking about them, we realize that we all think the same things, right? We all have the same like fucked up thoughts and experiences, and not exactly the same, but we're more alike than we are different.
Definitely. And I think when you go working with a 12-step program, and you're right, we share our experience, strength, and hope, and those moments of identification with people. And it's like that. I know it's a bit of a hashtag now, but that me too. I think like that. I feel like that. I thought I was, I was the worst person on the face of the planet. And actually, I'm not alone in thinking that.
Especially when you have an addiction, like, I kind of validated myself a lot in my eating disorder, because I was like, well, I'm only hurting myself. I'm not hurting anyone else. And I'm not drinking, and I'm not doing drugs. So it's okay, right? Like, we can validate kind of anything in our mind if we want to.
Yeah.
And what I had to come to realize was, like, me hurting myself does hurt other people.
Yeah.
And it's and I'm not alone. I think the biggest thing is, especially right now, so many of us feel so alone, yet we're so connected. It's mind-blowing. Yeah. We're connected to so many people, yet we're disconnected to what's in front of us.
I like that. I think you're absolutely right. You know, in modern technology, we are really connected. I mean, look at me and you, we're across, you know, a complete ocean, but yet we're connected. And when we met, when we were doing that coaching program together, I just felt this connection towards you, like an alignment to your journey and to our journey, but yet still feeling quite alone. You know,
I mean, I spend a lot of time in my house staring at my phone, just wishing that someone would contact me. And it's like, how hard is it to send a text message to someone and say, hey, I need someone to talk to, right? Mm-hmm. But we're all kind of dealing with it in our own way.
Absolutely. But I think in terms of a 12-step program, you know, that's one thing we're taught, is to reach out, talk to other people, get connected. And even with all of that and those tools that we're given, it's still really hard to send that text and saying, you know, I need to speak because I'm feeling lonely, or I need to speak because A, B, C, D, E, F, G is going on for me, you know, and having that element of vulnerability with people that aren't going to then turn it around, use it against you. Because in my experience, in my darkest days, that is what happened. I'm not saying recently, you know, since turning my life around, that isn't the case, but I have more evidence to the negative than I do to the positive. So it's really hard.
I like that a lot. Yeah, I'll say for myself, in my family background, the way I grew up, and this is what's so beautiful about this program, is it's a reparenting program. So like, I didn't get the parenting that I needed. I had absent parents, they were on drugs, and they're mentally ill, you know, they're mentally ill and they didn't get the help that they needed. And that's unfortunate. And it just rolls down the generations until someone picks the ball up and is like, you know, I'm not gonna do this anymore, you know? And I decided that was me, or maybe God decided that was me. I'm not sure. But what's great about this, you know, we addiction thrives in isolation, mm-hmm. because you don't want people to know. You don't want people to know what you're doing. You don't want people to know that you're struggling, because there's almost this familiar comfort to feeling that way, right? And
it can be quite comforting. Yeah.
Well, and if that's all you know, mm-hmm. I mean, that's all I knew. I grew up really alone is a good word to use. I grew up really alone, and I had to be an adult really quickly, and I had zero control over what was going on around me. I had zero control over people touching my body. I had zero control over people screaming at me, people screaming at each other, people hitting each other. And so it just, like, from the perspective and mind of a child, it was just really scary all the time. And the way that I explain my eating disorder is I felt so uncomfortable in my life that the only way that I could create comfort was to fill my body with food to a point where I was so uncomfortable, right? So the discomfort I was experiencing around me, I would create that feeling in my body. And the act of purging was this self-soothing, right? It was the only way that I could comfort myself. When I purged, it was a release, right? It was, oh, well, I can create my own discomfort and create my own comfort, because I cannot get it from anyone around me. No one around me is able to be that person for me. And I'm going to have to do that for myself. And I used food as a way to create that comfort. And once you've done that for most of your life, I mean, it just becomes a way of life. You just don't even know how to put that thing down.
Mm. It sounds like almost like an element of control as well. It's the one part
Oh, it's a
that you could control in this chaotic arena as a child, and then take it into. Would you say that would be a fair assumption, that it was
completely, it was the only thing that I could control. And when everything feels out of control and nothing makes sense, we're kind of meaning makers, right? And so we have to make meaning out of things. And so how do you make meaning out of it? You just I just do this thing and it makes me feel better. And then I can be happy for my mom, and I can be happy for my dad, even when they're, mean to me. And even when they're angry with me, I can be happy because I know how to make myself happy. The thing is, every time I purged, it's that hit of dopamine, right? Mm-hmm. And so then you need more, like the feel good chemical, you just need more and more of it. So you have to do the thing more often. Mm-hmm. What's sad about eating disorders is, in my experience, what I've found is most people think it's a vanity issue. Most people think it's I don't want to be fat, I want to be skinny, so I'm going to have an eating disorder. Or, that's a very common conception. But the reality is it's more of a control issue. I feel out of control and I need control. And what happens is, people like me, I was a little fat kid. I wasn't what you would consider someone with an eating disorder. The general idea is you think of someone that's real thin, right? And that's an obvious, that person has an eating disorder. But for me, I was pudgy, even though I was throwing up multiple times a day. Sometimes I'd throw up 10 times a day. I was still pudgy. I was ruining my body. I was completely losing, my body lost complete trust in me. And I had multiple different ailments. And I went to the doctor, and sometimes I told them I had an eating disorder. Most of the times I did not. And all of these ailments, it was like trying to fix this thing, but I'm not telling you why the thing is broken. Mm. And it was really confusing.
Very confusing. And I suppose it's like you said, I think it sort of struck a chord with me, that there's a preconception about an eating disorder, a way a person should be looking, and how they should be displaying certain symptoms. And I had to acknowledge that, because I'm guilty of that 100%, and so for someone that has a eating disorder and then trying to speak to a professional about it, that must have been really hard.
It's interesting. So I was in the military for 11 years. And what I don't understand is, I told doctors that I had an eating disorder. I told therapists that I had an eating disorder. I'm in an attempt, right? Like, I can look back at my life and see where I was like, I'm going to speak up for myself, and then come back down, right? Like, and so when I spoke up for myself, they didn't acknowledge it, almost, right? Like, most people's reaction was like, oh, well, you shouldn't do that. Well, okay, I shouldn't smoke crack either, but what do you know what I mean? Like, obviously I shouldn't do it. I'm coming to you for a problem. I should probably get some help. But when you're when you don't know what you don't know, I didn't know help was out there. Like, I thought me asking my doctor was the biggest amount of help I could get. I didn't know that there were these treatment programs. I didn't know about 12-step programs. No one had told me. And so it was almost like I was just suffering in silence. And in my marriage, when I finally got to the point where I was being honest with my husband, he would say the same thing, like, oh, don't do that, hun.
Almost very patting you on the head, almost, isn't it? Even when you're going to a medical professional and saying, because it's the same, for my addiction, you're going to a doctor and expecting some sort of help, and they just give you a substitute drug and it's patting your head. I never knew about a 12-step program, and the fact that help is out, that it's freely given.
Free, like what I've gotten from, I've been in therapy since I was 9. I mean, pretty much on in therapy since I was 9. I've had a really traumatic past. Not a single person, I haven't gotten as far, I haven't progressed nearly as far as I have in a 12-step program. And I would say that it directly has to do with accountability, right? Like you go to your therapist and the therapist is like, okay, I'm going to tell you some things that you need to do. And then next week when you come in, like, tell me if you did them. Well, that's like a one person. When you're in a group with like 9 people, and that's a small one, right? My group is like around 9 to 15. When you're in a group with like 9 people and you show up every week, and these people, like, it's almost like a family, you know, or like a team, and you're all kind of counting on each other to show up, and you're counting on each other to be real and honest. And that builds trust. And then when you have trust, so much can grow from trust. But without that, it, like, you know, if I don't trust my therapist, I remember going to therapists and being like, they don't fucking care about me. They don't give a shit about me, you know? And it makes me like, why do I want to change if I don't think that anyone cares?
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think you're right with the 12-step program. You know, there is their accountability, but people care when they don't have to care. They're not getting paid. They're there.
No, yeah. So it's genuine. So, you know, it's real, right? And we kind of rely on each other. I mean, I have people in my fellowship that I count on, you know, I count on for step meetings. I count on for being able to call and be like, I'm struggling today. Like, please just tell me everything's going to be okay, you know?
And of course, you know, like that therapeutic value of, you know, you can be, I'm going to speak for me. I can be in a really bad place, dark place. Someone rings me because they need help, because they're in a bad place, or whatever's going on for them. And it instantly brings me out because I can be of service. I can help another human being get through the next whatever, but it takes me out of self. And then when that phone call ends, or when that person, I kind of land back in myself and think, actually, I'm all right. You know, that therapeutic value.
That's such a huge part of it. And I think, like, for me, when I share at meetings and people are like, oh my God, thank you so much, that helped me so much, it's such a boost. And it's not necessarily an ego boost per se, but it's like, I'm of value, right? We all need to feel like we're valued. We all need to feel like we're worth something. Worthy is a big word for me. I felt unworthy my whole life. I felt unworthy of life, of food, of nourishment, of love. And that's all because I got hurt when I was little. I got hurt really badly over and over again. And I just decided in my brain that I didn't deserve anything good. And what happens is our brain creates everything outside of us. So if I don't feel like I deserve anything good, I'm not going to get anything good. And it's going to be a constant reminder of how awful I am, right? And so then you kind of spiral into this place that is detrimental, you know, really. And that's shame, right? That's how shame kind of keeps you. I call it a shame hole, because it's almost like being in a hole that you can't get out of, and you're trying to crawl out, and there's just no, you know, there's no way out. And the way out of that is someone reaching down their hand in there and pulling you out and saying, this is not where you belong. You're okay.
Yeah, definitely. I like that, the shame hole. It just makes me want to go butthole. I don't know why, but it just because it's the same, isn't it, being in the shame hole? But yeah, I think the value of what a 12-step program can come and being part of a fellowship, you know, not just working the program, but the, you know, being around people that think and feel and behave in the same way as me, that, you know, like that, like I said, just said about the phone call, someone phoning me up and needing help, but ultimately someone phoning up and being, I ain't seen you okay? You know, and feeling like actually I'm of value to somebody else, because I must be if they're phoning me to see if I'm okay.
Yeah. We all need to derive value from ourselves, because we are all valuable and unique and perfect, honestly. Like, you know, we're not meant to be the same. We're not meant to all be like one another. I spent my whole life trying to be like other people, thinking that would bring me something. And what I came to find was that who I am is perfect, right? I'm not perfect, but who I am is the divine perfection. Like, God made me the way God was supposed to make me. I was made perfectly, just like everyone else, right? And once I realized that about myself, the ability for compassion just kind of like a ball going down a hill, it just got faster and faster and bigger until I just kind of radiate compassion and grace. Those are my two favorite words, and I didn't understand them until 3 years ago. I couldn't even fathom what that meant. But to be able to see someone else in their fullness, right, in their own version of brokenness and wholeness and love and hate and passion and disgrace, right? Like all of it, to be able to see all of someone and appreciate that. I couldn't do that before because I couldn't do that for myself.
Exactly.
Now that I can do it for myself, I can do it for other people. And I've grown a love that I didn't know was possible for life, you know, a zest for life. Like, I actually want to be here. I actually want to do things like this, right? I want to make a difference. I want to be of service to humanity.
And that's why when you said, and you couldn't have done that until you viewed it in yourself. And it's 100% right, exactly the same for me. Until I started to appreciate myself, have compassion for me and little Liz, you know, and not constantly wanting to be battering myself for getting things wrong. I get things wrong all the time. Do you know what? I brush it off because I'm perfectly imperfect. I was created exactly how I was meant to be. I'm not doing this chameleon thing either. You know, you're behaving like this, so I'm going to behave like this. You know, 100% just standing who I am. But until I started to do that, I couldn't see the beauty in others. You know, and humans are beautiful. You know, like this podcast is called, you know, Wonderful Humans, and the people that I have on are wonderful humans. But I genuinely, wholeheartedly believe that of everyone. You know, dark, good, light, bad, yin, yang. We're all perfectly imperfect. So I love that you said that. See, me and you, like we think alike.
I like how you brought up chameleons. I used to describe myself, and I did it with so much pride. Like, I was so proud of this. I would be like, you guys have no idea. I could be anybody. I could literally be anybody. And I would go, I've got a Rolodex of masks in a closet in my brain. And I just go, and at any moment I can just be whoever you need me to be. And I had no idea that that was not a way of life that suits people. It does suit people. It's a protective mechanism.
Yes.
It's a protective mechanism. And when
you're just hiding, you're just sort of protecting yourself in any sort of situation. I'll become whatever you need me to become because it protects me and it keeps you over there. I do with that so much.
And that's like, for me, I spent so much time in judgment of myself and the way that I was, and judgment of the fact that I had an eating disorder, that I would lie to people's faces and not know why I did it, that I would say things and not mean them and not know why I did that. You know what I mean? Like, and be so ashamed and be like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm this person, but felt like I had no control over it. Like, it was just like, you know, my body just was on autopilot, which is a good way to describe it. Yeah. Once I got rid of my eating disorder, those masks didn't fit anymore and they didn't feel good anymore. For me to pretend just kind of felt off, right? Like something just didn't feel right. Well, it's no easy task to go from using this thing that you've used your whole life to keep you safe and comfortable, and then to be out in the world alone without your blanket of safety.
Yeah. Yes.
So the way that you like learn how to be in the world without your blanket of safety is like lots of practice and lots of love. Like it's the awareness. So I finally got awareness of what I was doing. And instead of getting into a situation where I lied to someone and then beating myself, like I'm a bad person, I can't believe I did that, I was like, wow, I had to get curious. Curious is a really fun word for me, because curiosity is an easy way to kind of dance around and play around with like things that we do. So then if you can get curious to why you're doing something, like, well, why did I just lie to that person? Oh, my truth is this. And if I tell them that, they might not like me, or they might get mad at me. And in my childhood, when someone got mad at me, that was physically painful.
Yeah.
It was physically painful. Something really bad would happen. And so then you kind of bring back to life that inner child that you kind of left behind because it wasn't safe, and you bring them into the fold. And there's lots of children in there, right? There's, the little kid and the teenager and the preteen and there's all of these yous, right? They're all you. And what's beautiful is we're calling them back. I'm calling them back. I'm calling them back, and I'm saying, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I left you. And I'm so sorry that I told you you weren't okay. And I'm going to allow you to be here now. And it is such a process. It is not easy. I spent a year crying every day, literally every day. I would be like, what do you want? What do you like? I didn't know my favorite color. I didn't know my favorite food. I didn't know what I liked to do, what my hobbies were. I had no idea, because I liked what everybody else liked. I didn't truly know who I was. And so I got to explore and go on, an adventure and try a bunch of things and be a beginner and see what was fun and what I didn't really like and say no. And
powerful in that though, isn't it? Learning to say no, and I don't know about you, but even today, I'm still figuring out some things that I thought I liked, but actually, maybe I don't like them, and still on that journey of discovery and in actually understanding that it's not a destination. How I was this morning is completely different to how I am this afternoon, because there's stuff that's happened in between that's changed me as a human, and that's okay. And that's okay. But I really liked your analogy about all the different children. Those different versions of myself, because when I first come around, it was crippling, absolutely crippling, of wanting you to really, really like me. But actually, how can you possibly like or love me? Because I don't like or love myself. In fact, I repulse myself. So if I'm repulsed by me, you really are, and having to go on that journey of self-discovery and knowing, starting from a place of you're all right, like, and having to switch those behaviors so that I can collect the evidence that I was okay, not the lying and not the just a people pleasing and all the other different behaviors, and changing them so I can say, no, I come from a respectful, truthful heart. Actually, I must be okay. It's difficult though, isn't it?
It's not easy. And it's an everyday thing, right? It's not like I had this idea that I was going to do this one thing and then I was going to be fine. Like, I'm going to go to this 12-step group and then like, I'm good. Like, I don't need anything else after that. And like, I'm healed, and then I thought I'm going to do this and I'm healed and I'm going to do, and what I realized is that like, no, I'm going to do all of these things and I'm going to have to continue to do more. And it's a process. And every day I'm going to have choice, right? Like, we have free will. Every day I'm going to have a choice. And there's going to be all of these, the plate of fruit is presented in front of me, and it's up to me to choose which I'm going to take, right? What's going to be better for my body and what's going to be not better for my body. And so some days I do better than others. Some days I choose all really good things, and some days I choose some things that are not as good, right? And I get to honor that in myself. And I get to say, you didn't make great choices today, and that's okay. Tomorrow we'll try again, right? But before, I would have demonized myself, and I would have been like, you're terrible, you're a bad person, you're never going to get better, you're never. And so the change is just honoring that sometimes I don't always do the best, right? Sometimes I'm not operating at 100%. That's okay, right? I know that tomorrow is a new day. I know that in an hour things will change. Like, that's the key. Sometimes I have to look at the clock and be like, in 10 minutes, things will be different. And I just have to give myself 10 minutes.
But you're absolutely right. You know, like coming into a program like what you said about, you know, being fixed. But my son is knocking on the window, and doing one thing and thinking I'm going to be fixed, but then doing lots of other outside things to sort of, you know, heal different parts of myself as well. You know, I'm really apologizing because my son is really distracting me. And that's what
he's like, right.
Please stop.
You're like,
so that's what I was going to say to you, you know, and it filters down to children, doesn't it? You know, about breaking that cycle of, you know, and both my parents are dead, and so I'm not going to go into it. I'm not going to, because they're both dead. But, you know, knowing where they parented from wasn't necessarily the greatest, and they just were using the tools that had at that time, but breaking that cycle. And I think it's something you said at the very beginning, but, you know, about breaking that chain, breaking that cycle, and how I parent today is very different to how I was parented, because I'm really conscious. But what enabled me to do that was working in a task set program, really looking at my behaviors and understanding my behaviors and my belief systems that actually weren't none of mine. But a lot, even now, I have to challenge that, because they're not my belief systems. They were being instilled by me via my parents and the people that were around at that time, you know, even down to that the only thing I have to offer is sexual. I have nothing else on the plate. I have nothing else to give anyone apart from that.
My body.
Yeah. I couldn't think of the word then, but you're right, my body.
Well, because I have that too. I am worth nothing but a, you know, pleasure for someone else. And that caused so much pain for me. I like how you said, you know, parenting, breaking the chain is not, I think, to challenge your belief systems. First of all, to have to look at everything that you believe and say, is this true? And do I truly, like, do I want to keep this? To even get to a place where you can tell yourself, I don't have to choose this anymore. Like, I don't have to make that my reality, is a huge place to be. And it is I think the thing that I want to really reiterate most is it is a daily practice. They have, you know, the word practice is there for a reason. You don't get better just by doing it one time and then never doing it again, right? You have to do something every day. That's why, you know, going to meetings, that's why it's good to dedicate once a week or twice a week, right? Like you have to set yourself up for success.
Yeah, absolutely.
And a couple of the things that I did, and you have to do what works for you, right? Like, this idea, someone asked me one time, they're like, well, you've changed so much in 3 years. Like, how have you changed? How did you do that? And there's no simple answer. It's not like, oh, well, I started a 12-step program, or I did breath work, or I found a bunch of spiritual teachers, or I read a bunch of books, right? It's all of it, right? Like, I did all of those things, and I had tons of conversations, and I had lots of crying, and I journaled a ton, and I, journeyed to different parts of myself, and I wrote love letters to myself on an almost daily basis for a long time, because once you've hated yourself for so long, what is, you know, how do you combat that? Like, how do you come back from that? I had to profess my love for me every day, like I was a partner, you know?
No, absolutely. And you've just reminded me of an analogy, actually, about that it's a practice for a reason. I heard someone doing a shower, and I'm completely stealing this. It's not my own, that the shower that I had yesterday doesn't keep me clean today. And I just think that's a really powerful thing. And it's like, I don't just brush my teeth once. I get every morning up and every morning and do it. Otherwise, I'm not going to have any teeth. So you're right, that practice day in, day out, turning up, trying lots of different things to keep myself grounded, keep myself connected, keep myself from absolutely assassinating myself mentally. It's like I'm often said, people say, oh, very positive, Liz, and my view of myself. But it's a daily, I can wake up in the morning and my head will tell me the most awful things about myself. I don't wake up naturally and I go, I'm a queen. Like, it doesn't happen like that. Like, this morning I woke up and I'm right in the middle of a house move, and my head every morning for months now has been like, who do you think you are? Like, who do you think you are? Like, you need to just go find a corner somewhere, do yourself in, the world will be a better place. And I have to combat that. I have to do my daily practices every morning. And like, I love the fact you said breath work. I've just started getting into breath work. Absolutely amazing practice. Amazing. And cold water immersion. So every morning I have a shower. The last bit of the shower, it's cold. The meditation and that handing over. Handing over, whether it be to God, whether it be to a higher power, whatever it is that is listening, just taking that, handing it over. And then affirmations, man. Like, I'm awesome.
I literally have note cards everywhere in my house. I have them taped on the walls, on the windows. I have them everywhere, because when I first got out of treatment, I didn't just automatically love myself. It wasn't like, oh, 45 days, we're good. The last 30 years meant nothing, like I had to just literally stare and be like, I am worthy. I am lovable. I am amazing. I am worth, I had to do that. And you got to do what you got to do. And it's a choice. Mm-hmm. And you got to choose. You got to be ready to choose you.
Yeah.
What I'm finding is that what I struggle with is I feel so good now. Like, I went from being suicidal for 20 years to I love my life. Like, I don't just like a little bit, like I am in love with life. I am in love with the trees and the sunrise and the sunsets, and like the fact that I get to be on this beautiful planet is a miracle to me. And my life is completely different. And I know so many people that were where I was. And what's hard for me is I want to gift that to everyone, especially my family members, and they are not ready. No. They're not ready, or they're not willing. And so I can't push. All you can do is present something and say, I've got this thing and you could have it if you want it, but they have to want it.
Exactly. You're not going to eat until you're hungry.
And that is, I asked someone the question recently. I was like, what is the catalyst? Like, what, we talk about bottoms. There's people who have to reach their bottom. And I'm like, well, how much more bottom could some of these people go? Like,
the depths. Yeah.
Like, how much more could you, till you ask me for help? Come on.
But that in itself, people struggle with that though. Just those little words, help me. I need help.
Yeah.
That was a big one for me. Because you would see an element of vulnerability, and that was dangerous. If you saw my vulnerability, then that's it, game over. And I think for a lot of people, that's, that I need help, and you help me is huge.
It's hard watching people dip. It's hard watching people dip, and you're like, I reach out to people and I ask, if they like, how can I help? Do you need anything? Oh. Do you see Oscar?
I can feel him. I've got my spider senses going on and I can feel the child.
I tell my kids are like, Mom, how do you see everything? And I was like, I definitely have eyes in the back of my head.
Spidey senses. I'm telling you, it's spidey senses. See, the problem with doing it in the summer holidays is that having a child, I've just put my hand over his mouth, literally just like gagged him. I'm not hurting the child. For those that are listening on the podcast and not seeing the video, I'm not hurting him. I've just gagged him because I find it really distracting. My mind goes, you know, I do my best. Hang on a minute. Can you just give us a minute, please? Just give us a minute. Okay. Where were we?
You know, the idea of parenting is so interesting because when you're parenting, it brings up all of your stuff, right? Like I have a 12-year-old daughter and she looks just like me. And so all the things that she does, which are things that I used to do when I was little, but I used to get screamed at for, or I used to get, you know, slapped for, or whatever, right? Like my instinct, my natural instinct is that's what I should do to her. If she's doing it and, you know, I should do that to her. And so it's you have to be so aware of your behavior and you have to be so aware of it takes conscious parenting is hard because you have to be conscious and you have to say, okay, yes, this is bothering me very bad that you're doing. And really it has nothing to do with you and everything to do with how I feel and how I was treated, right? And so there's one part of you that's like, I never want to do that to you. And there's the other part of you that's like, it's not fair that you get this better life. Like, I definitely feel that sometimes, like, it's not fair. Like, you're going to come and complain to me about whatever, something silly when like I used to get super abused. So, someone told me this in a meeting one time and it was so helpful. Parent the child in front of you, not the one inside of you. Oh,
that is so powerful, you know, and I'm exactly the same. You know, I try to respond to Oscar and not react, because when I'm reacting to the child inside of me, because we are taught these parenting. We're taught these parenting skills unintentionally by our parents and how that filters down. And I'm not always great at it. And I do react sometimes, but I love that, you know, parent the child in front of you and not the child within you, you know, and that response and react is so important. This podcast is going to be horrendous because all you're going to hear is him in the back.
They'll get the gist of it. No, but parenting is hard, and it is a direct reflection. Like, it is a direct, you get to make all these choices to either do what was done to you or to do something different. And the hard thing with doing something different is, how do you know what different is? If you were parented one way and this is all you know, like, how are you expected? I tell my daughter this all the time. They didn't send me home from the hospital with a rule book. They didn't send me home from the hospital with like, this is everything that you're going to encounter and this is how you're going to deal with it. No, it's just like, figure it out, you know? And if you're left to figure it out with just the tools you were given, some of us were given really bad tools, and that's unfortunate. And that requires you to look outside of yourself. I have done so much self-help stuff and trying to just heal myself from my past that I was like, well, why don't I look up some parenting books? Like, you know, like, it's so simple, but it can be so overwhelming to be like, oh, well, I just don't know what to do. Right. And so I just did that recently. I was like, I'm struggling. My daughter's 12. She's a preteen. Like, we are going through the most with everything. Let me get a book that talks about how to parent your preteen. Like, you know, and so that's asking for help. That was me asking for help from myself and, you know, and looking for it and honoring that. And that's change, because before I just would have done more of the same and more of the same. And so I think what's really important is to honor and acknowledge these little baby steps, right? Because these baby steps turn into the whole entirety of your life.
Yeah.
And it's one step in front of the other, one foot in front of the other, one moment in front of the next, right? Like each moment is a chance to begin again and start over. Each moment is an opportunity to apologize and try again.
Mm. No, I love that. You're absolutely right. And it's extremely hard when, you know, we like to think that we're molding our children, but they have their own character, their own thought process, their own way of doing things. And sometimes it can be like banging your head against a brick wall. And I can't imagine for preteens. I'm not there yet, but I know for sure how headstrong Oscar is. I mean, he's a character, as you can see. And that, you know, just that alone, I don't think I'm in for it, but I just think you're going to get some teen stuff, aren't you? I know if he's anything like I was, we're in trouble already.
Well, you know, and it's all how you look at it. Perception is reality. So like, I kind of, and so I used to, you know, it's, our words are so powerful. So it's easy to be like, oh my God, today is going to be so rough. Or in the book that I read, they were like, you know, if everyone says preteens are hard or teens are hard and it's going to be so awful, then definitely you're going to get that because you're already expecting it. So I have taken the role of just joyful curiosity. And so every day I'm like, I wonder how she's going to be today. Or I wonder, I have a 5-year-old son too, who is a complete character. I'm pretty sure he's going to be an actor because he just has stories for days. And so instead of being like, I'm so annoyed by you, this is so frustrating, right? I kind of dig into it and I'm like, oh, really? Well, what happened then? Well, why? Well, how? What did it feel like? You know? And then I turn into this mom who's caring and compassionate and who like genuinely seeks to understand my children versus seeking to control them. And I can see where I sought to control them for so long. It was conditional love, which is what I was taught. If you behave in this way, then I can love you. But if you do not behave in this way, then I don't know how I can love you, which is how I was taught. Now it's, wow, you're behaving in this way, which means you're trying to tell me something. I wonder what you're trying to tell me, right? Because then you can make change. When it's, if you don't behave this way, then I can't love you. Well, then everybody's got a problem.
Oh, absolutely. I love that. And I love that joyfully curious. Like that is, and it really struck a chord with me because I do try and behave like with Oscar, you know, if he can tell the tallest of stories and just being interested and not being like, yeah, what was that? But actually engaging with that conversation because my childhood was very dismissive. Like, you're in the way, go away, you know, be quiet. You're telling lies rather than actually you're just telling a kid as a story because I'm using my imagination, really dismissive, and try not to do that. And I like that, becoming joyfully curious. I really, really like that. You know, that's a beautiful way of sort of just trying to engage with the children. And this is just one moment in time that we'll never get back. And to make the most of that moment in time and enjoy it, you know, and you're right, language it's almost like spellbound, isn't it? If I tell myself this is going to be really hard, then it's going to be really hard. There's going to be no two ways about it. But if I say to myself, you know, how can I make this beautiful? It's going to be beautiful.
You know, it's a choose your own adventure story, right? Like we're all in a choose your own adventure story and we're all just like only doing what we know. My therapist used to tell me, you can't help what you didn't know when you didn't know it. And that was so helpful for me because I would just beat myself up, right? Like once I learned a new skill, I would be so angry with myself. Like, I can't believe I was this way for so long and I didn't allow, you know, like, I can't believe I was so mean or I was so hateful. Like to have compassion, like, I can't help that I didn't know that. I literally had no other way of knowing any other way to be. For me, what I've found the most grounding and helpful is I used to hold a lot of anger. I held so much anger towards people that hurt me, physically, mentally, emotionally. And when I didn't understand the word forgiveness. I mean, the concept of forgiveness never made sense to me. I just was so angry that I was like, no, these people don't deserve it. These people, they're evil, they're hateful, right? Like I thought these things when I kind of saw the whole of humanity and I saw different aspects of my own story and how, my mom's beginning played a part into my beginning, and how my dad, like both of them had really horrible childhoods, way worse than mine. Then it just released me from so much anger, right? Like when I realized that they were doing the best they could and their best wasn't what I would deem fit for consumption, but it was their best. It kind of let me let them off the hook, because the more that I have let other people off the hook, what I've realized is I'm actually letting myself off the hook. The more that I can do it for others, the more that I can do it for myself. And that's all that I want, really, because all I really want is to feel at home within myself.
And it's funny you should say that, because I was working with a lady quite recently about forgiveness. And I said to her, forgiveness isn't for the other person. Forgiveness is for you. While you're walking around with this resentment, this hatred, this darkness in your heart, they're walking around oblivious. Like they ain't got a clue what's going on for you. But the minute you can forgive and can release that, I promise you, you'll feel better. I promise you. And I equate that to my parents. Both my parents died before any sort of amends process was made. But I have real forgiveness for them. It wasn't great. They did what they did. They did with the tools that they had at the time. What I get to do is forgive them. But don't then bring this into my present day on how I parent. That's the biggest gift, is acknowledging where they were at and then not filtering this into my life at the moment. And I just need to apologize to people that were listening on the podcast and not watching. My child just got out of a box. So that's what the noise was. Good God. Oh, dear.
How old is Oscar?
He's 7. Oh. And the apple hasn't fallen far from the tree. I like an audience. And he likes an audience, and it's something that I do try and nurture, but there's no way I'm going to be able to edit any of that noise out of this. So it is just going to land, and hopefully people are going to listen and think that's really natural. That's real life.
Well, it is real life.
Exactly.
It is real life.
So if you had one parting message, one golden nugget that you could give to the listeners, what would it be?
Oh, that where you are right now is perfect. How could you be anywhere else? And that where you're going is even better than where you are right now. And to just keep going. It's so easy when you're hurting to think that this is it and there's nothing else out there. But there's so many resources available. And I think my parting message would be like, empower yourself to find resources that can help you, and be brave and put yourself out there, because you're worth feeling like life is worth living.
I love that. I absolutely love that. Thank you so much for coming along and just having a conversation with me. I love it. And if anybody wanted to contact you and work with you, how would they do it? I mean, obviously give me some links and I'll attach it to the bio of this when it goes out on Tuesday, obviously. But let's just tell the listeners, how can they contact you if they would like to work?
Yeah, I'm Alyssa DeLuna. My website is alyssadeluna.com. I am a self-love and empowerment coach and a motivational speaker. And My Instagram is Succulent Survivor, but also under Alyssa DeLuna, and you can find me in those places. And I love to chat. So if anybody wants to message me and like have a conversation, I'm all for it.
And as I just said, this is going to give me the links to all of those platforms, and I will attach it when this goes live on Tuesday, and it will be on the bio of the podcast as well, so that you just be able to copy and paste or click the link and you will be able to find her. Thank you so much indeed. True blessing, my sister from across the pond. And in terms of being able to contact me, I think most of you know how to get hold of me. Like, so I should just leave it there. If you want to listen to this podcast and you're unsure where to find it, so you can find it on most platforms, and it's just Wonderful Humans with Liz Turner. Just if you put my name in, it will come up. So just Wonderful Humans with Liz Turner. Thank you so much.